welcome to Vegan Travel Guides. If, like me, you're a frequent traveller over about 35, then you probably remember lugging around guidebooks. And if you're under 30 or so, then you probably think the idea of buying a travel guide is ridiculous. Why would you pay for information when you can find it free online, right? Now, I bridge these two groups. In my younger backpacking days, I carried around the guidebook religiously. But I've also been travelling with devices to find vegan restaurants and book accommodation online ever since this first EPC came out in 2007. And for the last few years, I've been working here and on several dedicated research trips to Japan to create a unique new vegan travel guide to the country. So what's a vegan travel guide and why might you want one? First, let's start with what it's not. In the Japan Vegan Travel Guide, I recommend and review almost 100 restaurants and cafes right across the Japanese mainland. So why not use Happy Cow? Indeed, Happy Cow is great, and I recommend that everyone use it to find nearby restaurants, write reviews, and of course update it as you go. And there are links all through the book for this purpose, but more on that soon. Part of the inspiration for my vegan travel guide to Japan came from the Japan Vegan Pocket Guides, which were an absolute lifesaver back in the days before smartphones and Google Maps. But a vegan travel guide is not Happy Cow or a vegan pocket guide. It's certainly not a catalogue of vegetarian restaurants or a book of more in-depth vegan restaurant reviews, as useful as these can all be for many travellers. Vegan travel guides are essentially a fusion of these traditional vegan food and restaurant guides with traditional travel guides like these to make a complete travel and food guide written by vegans for travelling vegans and vegetarians. As a sign of authenticity, I took all the photographs in the Japan Vegan Travel Guide myself while in Japan. Also, all the photos shown throughout this video, and also the maps and other diagrams, are taken straight from the Japan Vegan Travel Guide, so this video serves to both explain what a vegan travel guide is, and also to offer a sample of images from the Japan edition. Now, if you're a super organised, tech-savvy person with lots of time on your hands, then you don't need this guidebook. You could instead carefully plan your own itineraries using online resources like Google, TripAdvisor, and of course Happy Cow. In that case, what I can offer you is a saving of your time by presenting itineraries, maps and travel information in one easy package which you can read at a coffee shop or on the plane. But I know from meeting countless travellers throughout the years that most foreign tourists don't plan their trips to Japan all that well. Most people just don't have the time, the inclination or the computer skills, so they end up winging it. Now, winging it is actually my natural travel style, but Japan is not the country for it, especially during the busy seasons. Many travellers come away from Japan feeling overwhelmed by the crowds and the complexity of the rail system, and underwhelmed by their experiences, especially considering how much their trips cost them. It's frustrating to see how many tourists turn up to Japan intending to travel all over the country without a Japan Rail Pass, which, as I discuss in the book, is one of the world's best travel bargains and is essential for most but not all visitors to the country. And vegans and vegetarians often become overwhelmed by difficulties finding food if they haven't planned in advance, which is so sad because Japanese vegan food is among the best in Asia, if you know where to find it. Many travellers, for example, don't try the best vegan restaurants like Kangaan because they don't realise that they need to reserve their meals there at least 3 days in advance, which is normal for high-end vegan restaurants in Japan. It's also frustrating to see tourists turning up to the best attractions at the busiest times. As long as you reserve your tickets on the Sagano Romantic train early enough, then the nearby historic district of Hiroshima is so spread out that it can be comfortably visited on busy days, even public holidays, especially if you walk through the string of beautiful and usually quiet temples in the nearby mountains. But turn up to the beautiful 400-year-old Himeji Castle on a public holiday and you'll probably find it looking like this. And Higashiyama in Kyoto, whose tiny Sannenzaka is the busiest street in Japan, also needs to be visited on a quiet weekday to appreciate the beauty of this foot route through the heart of the old city. This Vegan Travel Guides project grew out of my 2 blogs for Taiwan and Japan, which I've kept for the last decade. Back in the days when people actually read blogs, these were among the most read internet sites on veganism for both of these countries. As well as posts about food and restaurants, I also began to post some suggested outings which combine tourist attractions with nearby vegan restaurants. These became some of my most popular pages, and they inspired me to write the Vegan Travel Guide to Taiwan in 2015. Even as a first attempt which didn't cover the whole country, and even though I only ever advertised it on my blogs, I've sold hundreds of copies and received all 4- and 5-star reviews from vegan and vegetarian travellers around the world. One of my favourite places in Japan is the historic town of Koyasan. While it's a pilgrimage site for many Japanese, you don't need to be Buddhist or Japanese to enjoy staying at a temple and dining on their delectable Shojinodori cuisine. And when temple accommodation is combined with 2 meals, it becomes excellent value for money. Visitors to the town can also explore the beautiful 1,000-year-old graveyard and visit the tomb of Kukai, Japan's most revered and influential monk, who was also one of the country's first strong proponents of vegetarianism. But I've never actually met a foreign vegan or vegetarian who went to Koyasan because so few people know about it. Now, one of the reasons that travel guides have gone into decline is that many travellers, especially millennials like myself and younger, prefer to use online resources, which are more interactive and are usually free. But vegan travel guides offer the best of both worlds. They're complete in and of themselves, without any advertisements, and they work offline. But I've designed them to integrate with online resources rather than compete with them. So if you do choose to buy a SIM card in Japan or set up global roaming, then the excellent Japan Guide and other websites, Happy Cow and Google Maps, are all just a click away. So how does the guidebook work? Producing, storing and distributing books in the traditional publishing system is impractical for a guide like this because the information in it changes too quickly. So at this stage it's only available as an ebook on Amazon's Kindle platform, because this way I can easily update it as restaurants and attractions change, as I have been doing with my Taiwan guidebook for the last 4 years. The book can be read on virtually all Android and Apple devices and also on Windows PCs. Of course, it also works with Amazon's own Kindle e-readers, but the maps and tables won't show up as clearly and the links won't open. I suggest downloading the Kindle app on both a smartphone and either an Android tablet or an iPad if you bring one with you to Japan. The text and especially the maps are easier to read on a larger screen, but it can also be useful to have it open on a phone as you move around, so that you can follow the itineraries and click on the directions links to bring up Google Maps, or show the Japanese addresses to passers-by if you need further help with directions. According to Amazon, the Japan Vegan Travel Guide is 966 Kindle pages long. That's based on the standard page size of a printed book, but a lot of that is photographs, maps, and lists of information such as addresses, walking directions, and opening hours, which most readers will skip over except when they need that particular bit of information. The book also contains 20 town and city maps like the ones we've already looked at, and 5 regional maps. Most tourist sites in Japan have clear bilingual signage, so the maps are intended more to offer an overview of a day's outing than step-by-step directions. So I also include budget and weather requirements on these maps. Now, Amazon says it will take about 5 hours to read this book. That might sound daunting, but the planning chapter is only 36 pages long and should only take an hour or two to read. In it, I discuss whether or not to buy the rail pass, fly between cities, or visit only one region. This is absolutely essential planning for a trip to Japan, as the rail pass, including how long it takes, when you activate it, and where you are when it expires, generally sets up a skeleton plan for a trip. I also discuss important times of the year and how they affect travel in Japan, including the sakura, or famed cherry blossoms, the koyo, that's autumn leaves, and snow season. But if you have time, I really recommend spending about half a day before your trip reading these 3 chapters, reserving most of your accommodation, and also booking some meals at Buddhist temples or other vegan restaurants if you'd like to try their famous Shojinrori cuisine. Then I suggest checking the weather forecast before your flight and reading the rest of the book and planning your trip on the plane. One of the few complaints I've had about my Taiwan guidebook, which I thought was fair since I classified as a travel guide, is that I don't recommend many hotels. Now, in response to that, in the Vegan Japan Travel Guide, I do recommend a few hotels I've stayed at in Kyoto, and most importantly I recommend vegan Minshuku Sanbeki Neko, where I am here, this traditional Japanese vegan B&B. I also recommend a few temples I've stayed at in Koyasan, which I'm confident, unlike others, serve entirely vegan meals. But I don't recommend specific hotels elsewhere because everyone has their own budgets and expectations when it comes to accommodation. Prices fluctuate rapidly, and virtually all hotels in Japan have clean, functional rooms and are safe and comfortable to stay at. Instead, I discuss international and domestic booking sites and the many different types of accommodation, including traditional ryokans and minshukus like this one, business hotels and their more upmarket equivalents, hostels, Airbnb-style apartments, and the famous, or should it be infamous, capsule hotels. This guidebook is intended for non-Japanese, first-time visitors to Japan. If you saw everything in this guidebook, it would probably take around 3 weeks to a month, but most visitors don't go everywhere, and some attractions are seasonal. To see everything in Kansai would take around 10 days, but I recommend that everyone spend at least 3 days in Kyoto. As for here in Tokyo, I packed the main tourist attractions into 4 itineraries, which could be seen in a day each, but if you visited all recommended attractions, including Disneyland and Disney Sea, you could easily spend over a week in the capital. The Around Tokyo chapter includes day or overnight trips to the beautiful historic port city of Yokohama and the nearby old capitals of Kamakura and Nikko. I also include the old trading town of Kawagoe and the nearby all-vegetarian Alishan Organic Cafe, which is located beside a beautiful swimmable river in the Inaka or countryside. The book also includes climbing Mount Fuji. Speaking of mountains, I also cover Nagano Prefecture, including the Happoone ski resort, a former Olympic site with a vegetarian and almost vegan cafe right on the slopes, and the medieval castle city of Matsumoto. Most tourists also go to Hiroshima, which is unfortunately very vegan unfriendly but is obviously important for its tragic history. Besides the atomic bomb related sites, I cover the sacred island of Miyajima. I also include Kagoshima, a beautiful port city at the southern tip of the Japanese mainland, which is famous for its active volcano. At the other end of Japan, I cover Sapporo, the capital city of Hokkaido, which has been a vegan hotspot in Japan for many years, and 2 nearby snow resorts. While vegan travel guides are written from a vegan perspective, of course I welcome everyone to use them. For vegetarians, plant-based and other health-conscious eaters, I believe this guidebook will be much more useful than a mainstream travel guide. In future, I hope to better support followers of other diets, particularly the Jain diet, which is the focus of Veggie Herb Saga here, my favourite restaurant in Tokyo, the Oriental vegan diet, and also people with allergies and intolerances. Whether or not you use my guidebook, I wish you a good, safe trip to Japan. Thank you. Here's my original Lonely Planet guide. Hey.
I love the accent.
Thank you. Just tell us that we'll be fine as long as we fish. Yeah.
No. Report, no. Report, no.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realise.